Moscow says it will increase missile attacks on Kyiv. The warning follows unverified Russian claims that Ukraine carried out airstrikes on villages in Russian territory and sank Russia's largest warships in the Black Sea. We're now getting reports of fatalities following Russian strikes in eastern Ukraine. As the war passes its 50th day, air raid sirens have been sounding across the country.
"50 days into the war, and this is still the wake-up call in Kyiv. Heavy explosions were heard here overnight. They're said to be the most powerful since Russian forces pulled out of the region around the capital. Russia says it will step up its attacks.
Tonight, sea-based high-precision, long-range missiles hit a military facility on the outskirts of Kyiv. The number and scale of missile strikes against objects in Kyiv will increase in response to any attacks of a terrorist nature or sabotage on Russian territory by the Kyiv nationalist regime."
Some are asking if it's also in retaliation for the sinking of this warship, the Moskva. Russia's acknowledged the ship has been lost, but not that it was due to Ukrainian missiles. Either way, a big blow, according to the Pentagon.
This is a cruiser. They only have 3 in this class, and it's basically designed for air defense. That's what this ship is designed to do, not unlike our own cruisers. So it's going to have an impact on their capabilities, certainly in the near term.
But this footage from the southern port city of Mariupol serves as a reminder of Moscow's military might and brutality. With Russia now focusing its attention on Ukraine's east, Mariupol would be key in connecting the southern and eastern fronts. Despite a strong Russian presence, Ukraine says the city hasn't fallen yet. The country's president used his nightly address to praise Ukrainian resilience.
To put it mildly, no one was sure that we would survive. Everyone sympathized. Many advised us to leave the country, advised us to actually surrender to tyranny. But they didn't know us either, and they did not know how brave Ukrainians are, how much we value freedom, our opportunity to live the way we want.
This war continues, and Ukrainians will need to show even more of that bravery if they're to repel the imminent Russian onslaught in the east.
Well, DW correspondent Rebecca Ritters is in Bucha, which Ukraine recently recaptured from Russian forces. I asked her about the situation there now.
I'm here in that town that has now been liberated. I mean, it's definitely nothing resembling normal, Phil, here. It's a ghost town. But one thing I was really surprised by, something that really struck me, was just the pace at which everything has been cleared away. You know, by now the world has pretty much seen those horrific images when Ukraine finally gained access to this area again, of all the tanks and the debris and stuff in that residential block that everyone was seeing. All of that pretty much has now been cleared. It was really quite surprising. I was surprised. I've only been in Kyiv one day myself, so I didn't see any of it previously, but definitely everyone here just really trying hard to get this city back on its feet. Some of the people we spoke to definitely telling me of the atrocities that took place here and welcoming me into their homes, which have been all but destroyed. One gentleman whose house had been used as a Russian headquarters, and his house had been completely destroyed. The Russians blew it up before they left, or just after they left, I suppose. So it's going to take a very long time. You'll see behind me everything, all the shops completely still destroyed. It's going to take a very long time, but people doing what they can to get this back on its feet.
And how are authorities going about gathering evidence?
Yeah, well, that is the next step. I mean, at the moment, authorities are working hard to gather evidence of war crimes. So far, the Human Rights Commission of Ukraine, as of today, has over 6,000 documented cases. Authorities definitely going through to talk to people hundreds, if not thousands, of journalists as well have been through and spoken to people, organisations such as Human Rights Watch and the like. That is sort of the next phase. At the moment here also, so much is being concentrated on the humanitarian effort. I mean, the city is still cut off from power and water, and telecommunications have been restored now. But obviously that is the first step. And then, of course, comes the documentation of all the war crimes. Yesterday I was speaking to the Commissioner, or the Ombudsman rather, for the Human Rights Commission, and she was saying they've also set up hotlines so that people can report. She said that was really important, particularly in the cases of the sexual violence claims, because many people were still terrified and traumatised and found it very difficult to come forward. So there are hotlines also set up to be able to take testimony.
Russian forces are now seem to be focusing their attention on the east of the country. Bring us up to date with what's happening there.
Well, that's right. Heavy bombardment or refocus of Russian efforts is expected really any day now in the east. So obviously for the last week or so, authorities have been telling residents to just get out of that area while they still can. I was reporting from down near that area on the region bordering Donbass on the weekend. Spoke to lots of people from Luhansk, Donetsk, those areas in the Donbass. Mass evacuations going on from the east and the south. But not everybody is leaving, of course. As of the other day, still around about 30% of people were staying in Luhansk. I actually spoke to a gentleman at the train station when I was leaving that area, and he was leaving too, but he was telling me about some friends of his in Luhansk that simply didn't want to leave. They were going to stick around and try and defend. They said they've lost everything already in 2014. They weren't prepared to do it again. And he broke down in tears as he was telling me the story. Obviously, the scenes that you just saw in that report there from Mariupol, the scenes that we've seen here from places such as Bucha, everyone worried that we're going to see similar scenes like that down in the east.
That's Rebecca Ritters in Bucha. Well, Ukraine's plight has prompted offers of help from around the world. But when asked what they need most, the answer from the Ukrainian leadership is always the same. Let's get more on this from Liam Collins. He's a retired US Special Forces colonel and has been a military advisor to Ukraine. He's now executive director of the Madison Policy Forum and joins us from West Point in the United States. Welcome to DW. All these weapons are pouring into Ukraine, but how long is it going to take for them to become useful for Ukrainian soldiers to be trained and able to use them to good effect?
It really depends on the weapon system and what the capability is. For example, the list of most recent aid to Ukraine included what I saw from the U.S. Mi-17 helicopters, which are Russian helicopters that their pilots are more than capable of flying. So that's something they can integrate right away. Javelin weapon systems, we started giving those in January of 2018. So again, that's a weapon you can disseminate and immediately employ. The Switchblade drones that you just spoke about, those we've been training them on for the last few weeks. And so we have a cadre that's trained, but obviously not everybody out in the field. So that will take time. So it really depends on the specific weapon system and what the training time is.
Right. And so it looks like Ukraine is not going to be short of hardware supplies. How is it doing in terms of actual troops to operate these weapons?
Yeah, I mean, that really hasn't, seen a lot of news on that in terms of what losses they've taken. I mean, they're fighting overwhelming combat power by the Russians, and they're slowly getting attrited. So we have to constantly replace those weapon systems, the ammunition that they're exhausting. But the fighters are going to be harder to replace. But they do have tens of thousands of volunteers in their territorial defense force that can supplement that effort. So it looks like they've been able to maintain that manpower for the time being, and they just got to continue to do that.
And what are you hearing about how Russia is doing in terms of rearming and putting itself in a position to keep up this pressure? We do hear a lot about their hardware being defective and badly maintained, but they do seem to be in a bind. They've got millions of dollars coming in every day from gas exports, but sanctions mean a dwindling number of sources of technology to maintain and replenish their hardware.
Yeah, I mean, for the most part, those gas exports and those sanctions, those are more longer-term effects. They're not going to affect the immediate warfighting capability. It's really Russia has a large amount stockpiled, so it's just getting those stockpiles to the fight. And as you said, some are dilapidated. They haven't been maintained, some of those weapon systems. They don't have a good logistical support system, and we've seen throughout this war. And so now they're trying to reposition troops that have already been some have been beat down pretty badly up in Kyiv and Kharkiv, and they're trying to reposition them to the east. So it's going to be a challenge to put good capable units into the fight on the east that haven't taken significant action already.
Let's talk about this, because this is what we've been hearing now, that Russia is preparing to go again at Ukraine's east and south. How do you see that panning out?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, Putin's trying to salvage some kind of victory, and he knows he can't get it up in the north, so he's trying to consolidate his forces and see what he can pull out of this. And so I'd expect to see it play out similar to what we've seen to date, right? You've got the overwhelming combat power of Russia against a much more tactically competent Ukrainian armed forces, right, that has good leaders, well-trained professional forces that are going to beat them in the tactical fight. So it's just a matter of, can Russia attrit, the more capable force to a great enough level to allow them to achieve victory, or can Ukraine continue to hold off, the Russian horde with smartly timed, good defenses and smart timed counterattacks that they can do it to their advantage.
And a brief word about Mariupol. How bad a loss would it be for Ukraine were Russia to take that port city?
Yeah, I mean, it's not a strategic capability. I mean, not in times of war, right? It's a key trading port. They need it for that capability, but I mean, they haven't had that since the war began, and so I mean, we've heard about the bridge between Crimea and the east, but it's not as strategic as people are making it out to be. Ukraine cannot, initially defend all their territory. They were going to take losses early in the war in terms of territory that they have to fight back, as they did up in the north in Kyiv and Kharkiv. So that's what I would expect to see there. And Russia still, despite its efforts down there, has not been able to take control of it at this point.
OK, good talking to you. Thank you so much for joining us, Colonel Liam Collins from the Madison Policy Forum.